Hello everybody. Welcome to the first live stream Tea and Books. And I hope that you can all see me and I hope that you can all hear me. And thank you, all of you who asked us to do this program. I know we have a lot of Tea and Books fans. It's one of our very popular programs, and it was so nice that so many of you reached out and asked if we could do this live for you so that you could experience it. And for any newcomers who have never done Tea and Books before, I'll tell you just a little bit about it. Basically, Tea and Books is book talking. And I hope that all of you have your tea. I don't have tea, I have water, because it just occurred to me that bad things could happen with tea on live television. But I hope you all have your tea handy, and I'm just going to talk about a few books. I don't want to take up too much of your time today. So once again, thank you for joining me on what I'm calling the big comfy chair. And I hope you look forward, like I do, to hearing about these books today. First, before we get started, I know that I've been getting a lot of emails with people asking me about ebooks and e-readers, and there are a lot of people using our ebooks collection. And I just wanted to recommend, before we start off, this is my ebook, and it is a Kobo Aura. And I just want to let everybody know, if you're thinking right now about getting an e-reader, Kobo is probably the best one to get if you want to use the library collection. Unfortunately, the Kindle e-readers don't work with the library collection. That's not on our side, that's on Amazon's side. They do it in the States, but not in Canada. So the Kobo e-readers are really nicely set up to work with the library's e-collection, and I really recommend them if you are thinking of getting an e-reader. I got one for my mother for her 89th birthday in April, and she's been reading quite a lot of books on it, so I'm telling you, you can do it. Don't be afraid. It's a good thing for people who are missing out on reading a lot of books right now. I also want to let you know that I will post a book list of these books after we're finished the live stream, and they are also available. There's actually a book list if you're in our Overdrive e-collection. If you scroll down, there's a book list where I've marked all of the books, both in ebook and e-audio, if they have the audio books, so that you can enjoy them after Tea and Books. So to get right in and get started, the first book I'm going to talk about today is not a new book. It's an older book, but it's one of my absolute favorite books, and I think it's exactly what we all need right now in terms of being very diverting. And it's by one of my favorite writers, Bill Bryson, and the book is called The Life and Times of the Thunderbolt Kid, and it is actually a memoir. So those of you who come to Tea and Books a lot have probably heard me promote many of his other books. Short History of Nearly Everything is one of my favorites, At Home, and very recently he published The Body, A Guide for Occupants. And all of those books are excellent, and his travel books are great too. And if you haven't had the pleasure of reading Bill Bryson, when I say travel books, you might be thinking something a little drier, but he is hilarious. He is very funny. He's very interesting to read, and he's just one of those people I would especially recommend if you can read audiobooks that he himself narrates, because when he reads the story himself, it's particularly funny, and he just seems like a person you really just want to have dinner with or have a beer with. So just to give you a little bit of a taste of this book is obviously, Bill Bryson was born in the States, actually in Des Moines, Iowa, which gets a lot of good press and bad press from this book. And he's a boomer, so he was growing up in the 50s and 60s, and it's just a really, really lovely example of what it was like to grow up as a child in the 50s and 60s, and it will be nostalgic for those of you who lived through that time to remember, you know, what it was like to live in a world, you know, where you didn't have to wear seatbelts and the, you know, kids played with radioactive materials. It's a really entertaining book. So I'm just going to read just a little portion out of it, just so you get an idea of what the book is like. So this is right near the beginning, so I don't want to give too much away, but you'll get a lovely flavor of the way Bill Bryson writes. So this is a book about not very much, about being small and getting larger slowly. One of the great myths of life is that childhood passes quickly. In fact, because time moves more slowly in Kid World, 5 times more slowly in a classroom on a hot afternoon, 8 times more slowly on any car journey of 5 miles or more, rising to 86 times more slowly when driving across Nebraska or Pennsylvania lengthwise, and so slowly during the last week before birthdays, Christmases, summer vacations, as to be functionally immeasurable. It goes on for decades when measured in adult terms. It is adult life that is over in a twinkling. The slowest place of all in my corner of the youthful firmament was the large, cracked leather dental chair of Dr. D.K. Brewster, our spooky, cadaverous dentist, while waiting for him to assemble his instruments and get down to business. There, time didn't move forward at all. It just hung. Dr. Brewster was the most unnerving dentist in America. He was, for one thing, about 108 years old and had more than a hint of Parkinsonism in his wobbly hands. Nothing about him inspired confidence. He was perennially surprised by the power of his own equipment. "Whoa!" he'd say, as he briefly enlivened some screaming device or other. "You could do some damage with that, I'll bet." Worse still, he didn't believe in Novocaine. He thought it dangerous and unproven. When Dr. Brewster, humming mindlessly, drilled through rocky molar and found the pulpy mass of tender nerve within, it could make your toes burst out the front of your shoes. We appeared to be his only patients. I used to wonder why my father put us through this seasonal nightmare, and then I heard Dr. Brewster congratulating him one day on his courageous frugality, and I understood at once, for my father was the 20th century's cheapest man. There's no point in putting yourself to danger and expense of Novocaine for anything less than the whole or partial removal of the jaw, Dr. Brewster was saying. Absolutely, my father agreed. Actually, he said something more like as he had just stepped from Dr. Brewster's chair and wouldn't be able to speak intelligibly for at least 3 days, but he nodded with feeling. "I wish more people felt like you, Mr. Bryson," Dr. Brewster added. "That'll be $3, please." So that gives you a little bit of an idea of how funny and entertaining Bryson's writing is. It really just does flow along, and it will make you smile, and it will make you laugh, and it will distract you. And like I say, it is an older book. I think it came out in 2006 now. Bill Bryson's The Life and Times of the Thunderbolt Kid, and it's a lovely memoir, and I would really recommend that you check it out. And like I said at the beginning, we do have that available right now on our Overdrive collection on the Scugog Library's website if you want to go in. If it's not available for you to read right away, you can place a hold on it, and we do have our own copy, so hopefully it should circulate fairly quickly and you should get a chance at it. We also have the audiobook, I believe, marked there too, so check it out, and I bet if you do, you'll also be a Bill Bryson fan, and you will also read everything that Bill Bryson has ever written like I have. I myself particularly like to listen to him in audiobook because I use audiobooks to help me fall asleep, and I find his voice is just really nice, and the stories are engaging enough that they keep me in line until I fall asleep. So the next book I'm going to talk about is a little bit more of a serious book. It was actually recommended on Reese Witherspoon's book club. Reese Witherspoon has a great book club. If you haven't checked out any of her picks, she really has a good eye, and most of the books she picks are interesting and very, very readable. And this is one that came out fairly recently. It's called Such a Fun Age, and it's by Kylie Read, and it's Kylie's first book. And basically it deals with race and privilege from a very interesting leaping off point, because it focuses on a young woman named Amira who lives in Philadelphia and is babysitting for a privileged, wealthy family. And she ends up getting called in as an emergency because the family has been through a little bit of an issue with some vandalism to the house late at night. And they call Amira to come and pick up the baby and just take her out of the house for a while so she's not scared by the police and everything that's going on there. So Amira leaves a friend's birthday party. So it's late at night. She's wearing the kind of clothes that you wear when you're going out to a party and going dancing. So they're not really what she would normally wear to babysit. And she ends up taking this little toddler to the store around the corner, which is a very upscale market that's open until midnight. And she goes there all the time during the day, but things get kind of out of hand because of the way she's dressed and because of the friend that she has with her, because they're trying to keep this little girl entertained, and they start dancing in the store, and they're actually dancing to Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody. So but they're having a good time, and they see some people watching in the store, and they think it's going to be okay, but then a security guard approaches her, and they're concerned that a black woman is in this store late at night with this little blonde white girl, and they get into a conversation. Ma'am, the guard said. Amira looked up at his large mouth and small eyes. It's very late for someone this small, he said. Is this your child? No, Amira said. I'm her sitter, and her mom asked me to take her because they had an emergency, and she wanted me to get her out of the house. They are 3 blocks away. She felt her skin becoming tight at her neck. We just came here to look at the nuts. Well, not to touch them or anything. It's just she's really into nuts right now, so yeah. For a moment, the security guard's nostrils expanded. He nodded to himself as if he'd been asked a question and said, Any chance you've been drinking tonight, ma'am? Amira closed her mouth and took a step back. The woman next to him winced and said, Oh, geez. The poultry and meat section came into view. All of a sudden, she saw a man coming from the meat and poultry section. You know what? It's cool, she said. We can just leave. Now, wait a minute. The guard held out his hand. I can't let you leave because a child is involved. But she's my child right now, Amira laughed again. I'm her sitter. I'm technically her nanny. That was a lie, but Amira wanted to imply that paperwork had been done concerning her employment and that it connected her to the child in question. Hi, sweetie. The woman bent and pressed her hands into her knees. Do you know where your mommy is? Her mom is at home. Amira tapped her collarbone twice as she said, You can just talk to me. So you're saying, the guard clarified, that a random woman 3 blocks away asked you to watch her child this late at night? Oh my God, no. That is not what I said. I'm her nanny. There was another girl here a few minutes ago, the woman said to the guard. I think she just left. They were doing some, I don't even know, some booty dancing or whatnot, and I thought, okay, this doesn't feel right. Amira's voice went high as she said, are you serious right now? Briar sneezed into the side of her leg. The man from the meat and poultry aisle came up and into view. His cell phone was raised and recording in front of his chest. Oh my God! Amira shielded her face with chipped black nails as if she'd accidentally walked into a group photo. Can you step off? I think you're going to want this filmed, he said. Do you want me to call the police? Amira dropped her arm and said, for what? Hey, big girl. The security guard got down on one knee. His voice was gentle and practiced. Who's this woman right here? Sweetheart, the woman said softly, is this your friend? Amira wanted to bend down and hold Briar. Maybe if Briar could see her face more clearly, she'd be able to deliver her name. But she knew her skirt was gravely short, and now there was a cell phone involved. It suddenly seemed like her fate was in the hands of a toddler who believed broccolis were baby trees, and that placing yourself underneath a blanket made it difficult to be found. Amira held her breath as Briar stuck her fingers in her mouth. Briar said, meh. And Amira thought, oh, thank God. But the guard said, not you, honey, your friend right here. What's her name? Briar screamed, meh. She's saying my name, Amira told him. It's Amira. The security guard asked, can you spell that for me? Hey. The man behind the cell phone tried to get Amira's attention. Even if they ask, you don't have to show your ID. It's Pennsylvania state law. Amira said, I know my rights, dude. Sir, the security guard stood and turned. You do not have the right to interfere with a crime. Hold up, a crime? Amira felt as if she were plummeting. All the blood in her body seemed to be buzzing and sloshing inside her ears and behind her eyes. She reached down to swing Briar into her arms, placed her feet apart for balance, and flipped her hair onto her back. What crime is being committed right now? I'm working. I'm making money right now, and I bet I'm making more than you. We came here to look at some nuts, so are we under arrest or are we free to go? So that's the sort of interaction that starts off right at the beginning of the book, and it ends up with Briar's father coming down to the store to speak up for her. But at that time, a lot of the damage has already been done. And what happens with the video around that incident and what happens, how it affects Amira's relationship with her employers and with the little girl, Briar. It's a very, very touching, interesting book, and it's really does a good job of exploring all of the different responses to that situation and how the people feel on each side of the story. So I really recommend that one. It came out, as I said, fairly recently. It's a first-time author, but really very popular right now and a good read. The last book I'm going to talk about today is called The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Now, some of you might have read Erin Morgenstern's first book. It was called The Night Circus. And Erin Morgenstern writes beautifully. It's just like nothing else I've ever read, really. She writes a sort of, I mean, technically it might be placed in the fantasy category, but it's not really. I would say it's more of a fable. It's just a beautiful word that she creates. And The Starless Sea, if you read Night Circus and you loved the whole feeling of that book, that same feeling is very much here in The Starless Sea. And it's about books and stories and the love of stories and a big collection of stories that basically is taken care of secretly all over the world. So it's a very interesting book to read. There are many different smaller tales within it, and it just reads so beautifully. So I'll start with just one very short story from it to give you an idea of how beautiful her writing is and how lovely the stories are in this book. The boy is the son of the fortune teller. He has reached an age that brings an uncertainty as to whether there is something to be proud of or even a detail to be divulged, but it remains true. He walks home from school towards an apartment situated above a shop strewn with crystal balls and tarot cards, incense and statues of animal-headed deities and dried sage. The scent of sage permeates everything from his bed sheets to his shoelaces. Today, as he does every school day, the boy takes a shortcut through an alleyway that loops behind the store, a narrow passage between tall brick walls that are often covered with graffiti and then whitewashed and then graffitied again. Today, instead of the creatively spelled tags and bubble-lettered profanities, there is a single piece of artwork on the otherwise white bricks. It is a door. The boy stops. He adjusts his spectacles to focus his eyes better, to be certain he is seeing what his sometimes unreliable vision suggests he is seeing. The haziness around the edges sharpens, and it is still a door, larger and fancier and more impressive than he'd thought at first fuzzy glance. He's uncertain what to make of it. Its incongruousness demands his attention. The door is situated far back in the alley, in a shadowed section hidden from the sun, but the colors are still rich, some of the pigments metallic. More delicate than most of the graffiti the boy has seen, painted in a style he knows has a fancy French name, something about fooling the eye, though he cannot recall the term here and now. The door is painted with sharp-cut geometric patterns that wind around its edges, creating depth where there is only flatness. In the center, at the level where a peephole might be, and stylized with lines that match the rest of the painted carving, is a bee. Beneath the bee is a key, and beneath the key is a sword. A golden, seemingly three-dimensional doorknob shimmers despite the lack of light. A keyhole is painted beneath so dark it looks to be a void awaiting a key rather than a few strokes of black paint. The door is strange and pretty and something that the boy does not have words for and does not know if there are words for, even fancy French expressions. Somewhere in the street an unseen dog barks, but it sounds distant and abstract. The sun moves behind a cloud and the alley feels longer and deeper and darker, the door itself brighter. Tentatively, the boy reaches out to touch the door. The part of him that still believes in magic expects it to be warm despite the chill in the air, expects the image to have fundamentally changed the brick, makes his heart beat faster even as his hand slows down because the part of him that thinks the other part is being childish prepares for disappointment. His fingertips meet the door below the sword, and they come to rest on smooth paint covering cool brick, a slight unevenness to the surface betraying the texture below. It is just a wall with a pretty picture on it. But still there's the sensation tugging at him that this is more than what it appears to be. He presses his palm against the painted brick. The false wood of the door is a brown, barely a shade or two off from his own skin tone, as though it had been mixed to match him. Behind the door is somewhere else. Not the room behind the wall, something more. He knows this, he feels it in his toes. This is what his mother would call a moment with meaning, a moment that changes the moments that follow. The son of the fortune teller knows only that the door feels important in a way he cannot quite explain even to himself. A boy at the beginning of a story has no way of knowing that the story has begun. He traces the painted lines of the key with his fingertips, marveling at how much the key, like the sword, and the bee and the doorknob, look as though it should be three-dimensional. The boy wonders who painted it and what it means, if it means anything. If not the door, at least the symbols. If it is a sign and not a door, or if it is both at once. In this significant moment, if the boy turns the painted knob and opens the impossible door, everything will change. But he does not. So the main story that runs through the Starless Sea actually comes back to that story about the boy, because as an adult, this man ends up finding a book that has this story in it. And when he reads the story, and it so perfectly describes this incident from his childhood that he remembers so clearly, it possesses him, and he needs to try and chase it down and figure out where this book is from and how it came to be here and why he has this part in a story that he didn't even know existed. So I think, again, it's beautifully written in the way that Erin Morgenstern has of making things seem magical. I chose this one today because I was trying to think of stories that would help people escape a little bit. And this is a beautiful story for that. It really takes you to a different time. And it kind of, I think, what Erin Morgenstern is best at is sort of awakening a feeling of once again being a child listening to someone reading or telling a fairy tale for the first time. That kind of wonder that you don't often get to have as an adult reading a book. So I would really recommend it. So once again, if anybody came in late, the books that I talked about today were, I don't know if this is showing backwards for you. It shows backwards for me, which is a little disconcerting. But Bill Bryson's The Life and Times of the Thunderbolt Kid, which is our nonfiction pick and is a memoir, but very, very funny. Such a Fun Age by Kylie Read, which is more of a domestic drama in terms of dealing with race and privilege and wealth, and but still a very entertaining book, and it has some romance in there as well. And The Starless Sea, which is the last one I just spoke about, by Erin Morgenstern. So once again, I will post this list, and this whole Tea and Book session will be downloaded and reloaded up to YouTube so that you can watch it again if you want to, or share it with people if you want to. And we're going to be alternating Tea and Books with Book Club Thursday afternoons at 2 o'clock. So this week is Tea and Books, and you get to just sit there and watch me talk. But if you want to read the book for book club and tune in on our Zoom book club next Thursday with Sarah to discuss a book with other people, the book that we are doing in book club, give me one moment because my mind is blank at the moment. Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. So if you have read her Little Fires Everywhere, which has recently been turned into a television show, this is another book of hers, Everything I Never Told You. It's an older book, but that's the one that we'll be discussing, or Sarah will be leading the discussion next Thursday at 2 o'clock. And if you enjoyed Tea and Books, you can come back 2 weeks from now on the 21st. And I will be here again. So thank you all for taking the time, and I'm sure we'll see you all soon.